In the heart of Vienna, one of Europe's richest men was quietly mopping the floors of his own restaurant, dressed in second-hand clothes, with a fake name and a fake past. No one recognized him. No cameras. No assistants. Just an old man, and a mission. For over 30 years, he'd built a culinary empire spanning 12 countries. Lavish openings, Michelin stars, Forbes lists, he had it all. But now, at 67, he no longer trusted the polished reports and smiling managers. He needed to see the truth, raw and unfiltered. So he disappeared, and returned as a cleaner. What he discovered in just 48 hours would shake him to the core, and change everything. Some employees would rise. Others would fall. And one secret would break his heart. This isn't just a story about food or fortune, it's about masks, morals, and the moment you finally see people for who they truly are. Hit like, subscribe and let's go. Before the disguise, before the lies, there was only Victor Stein. A man whose name whispered through Europe's fine dining circles like a legend. From the cobbled streets of Salzburg to the coastlines of Italy, his restaurants glowed like beacons of elegance. At 67, Victor lived in a penthouse above Vienna's historic Ringstrasse, where every morning began the same, a single espresso, handwritten notes, classical vinyl humming in the background. He was calm, precise, deeply private. Staff called him the ghost owner, always watching, rarely seen. But behind the calm, something had shifted. A letter left on his desk. A whispered complaint from a waiter. A sour glance from a once loyal chef. Tiny cracks in the porcelain. Victor had built his empire with care, but now, he wasn't sure what was hiding behind the smiles. And that uncertainty began to burn. It started with a voicemail. Short. Muffled. You should see what happens when you're not around, no name. No number. Just static at the end. Victor paused, finger hovering over the delete button. But something in the voice, the strain, the quiet panic, made him freeze. That same afternoon, a routine inspection at one of his flagship restaurants felt off. The maitre d' avoided his gaze. A sous chef looked startled to see him. And the floor manager, once warm and loyal, offered only clipped answers, avoiding every question. The air was thick. Unwelcoming. Even the bread was cold. That night, Victor walked home in silence, his polished shoes echoing through the alley behind the restaurant, the same alley where he spotted a dishwasher crying alone in the shadows. No one noticed. No one cared. He didn't sleep that night. Something was broken. And he had no idea how deep the rot went. Over the next week, the whispers grew louder, not in sound, but in presence. Victor noticed things others wouldn't. A bruised tomato deliberately hidden beneath perfect ones. Wine inventory that never quite matched the books. A young server, limping, who insisted she was fine, though no one had asked. He began arriving unannounced, staying longer than usual, watching. But the more he saw, the less he understood. Conversation stopped when he entered. Smiles reappeared too quickly. And once, during a late visit to the kitchen, he found a senior chef berating a teen apprentice, not with words, but with cold, calculated silence and a knife slamming too close to trembling fingers. Victor said nothing. Just watched. The warmth that once defined his brand had curdled into something harder, something sharp. And late that night, standing on his balcony, he realized something terrifying: he no longer recognized his own creation. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday. Victor received an anonymous envelope, no return address, just one photo inside. Blurry. Grainy. But unmistakable. It showed the head of HR slipping a thick wad of cash into a waiter's apron, behind the dumpsters. The timestamp? 10 minutes before that waiter had voluntarily resigned. Victor's hands trembled. This wasn't just bad management, it was something darker. Organized. Hidden. That night, he made a decision that would change everything. He shaved his beard. Dyed his hair. Bought a second-hand coat from a charity shop. And for the first time in decades, he walked into his own kitchen, not as the owner, but as Nicholas, a soft-spoken drifter looking for work. No one recognized him. Not the chef who once cried at his wedding toast. Not the manager who'd sent Christmas cards for 14 years. He was invisible now, and that was exactly what he needed. Because what he was about to uncover would destroy more than reputations. By day 3, Nicholas was no longer just mopping floors, he was listening. And what he heard made Victor's blood run cold. Staff weren't just mistreated, they were manipulated. Threatened. A line cook forced to cover double shifts or lose her visa. A cleaner charged for uniform rentals that never existed. Tips pooled and quietly pocketed by supervisors. Laughter echoed in the break room, but behind closed doors, fear ruled. He watched a teenage waitress silently wipe away tears after being screamed at for a spilled drink, her hands still trembling, her shift not even halfway done. No one comforted her. No one dared. Victor clenched his fists under the table, heart pounding. This wasn't one bad manager. This was a culture, a machine feeding on silence and power. He had built it. And now it was rotting from the inside. For the first time in years, Victor felt shame. Real, heavy shame. And a terrible question burned in his chest: how much had he chosen not to see? It all unraveled on a Friday night, the busiest shift of the week. A VIP client had arrived without warning, the kitchen was chaos, tempers boiling. Nicholas, Victor, was ordered to clean up a shattered wine bottle near the main entrance. As he bent down, he heard it. A voice, familiar and sharp. "You think the old man's ever coming back? We'd be better off without him." It was the general manager. The same man Victor had mentored for a decade. And then, laughter. Not just from him, from others. People he once trusted. "He's blind. Rich. Weak. We own this place now." Something snapped inside Victor. He stood up too fast. The manager turned. Their eyes met, and for a brief, electric second, recognition flickered. Then suspicion. Victor felt it like a knife to the gut. He wasn't invisible anymore. And now, he was a threat. He had crossed the line from observer to hunted. The machine was waking up, and it would not go down without a fight. That night, security dragged Nicholas into the alley, the same one, dark and wet, where he once saw a dishwasher cry. "You don't belong here," the manager hissed, his breath reeking of whiskey. They shoved him hard. His ribs screamed. Rain poured. And for the first time in decades, Victor felt truly powerless. No wealth. No name. Just a bruised, aging man on the pavement. Left there, like trash. He watched as the staff inside laughed, served, pretended, the machine still spinning. His life's work, hijacked. It felt like the end. Like he had waited too long. But then, a shadow stepped toward him. The teenage waitress, the one who'd cried alone. She knelt, whispered, "I know who you are," and pressed a phone into his hand. "I recorded everything." In her eyes, fear, but also courage. Victor clutched the device. Wet. Cold. Alive. Maybe he had built the problem, but now, he wasn't alone in fixing it. By morning, the city woke to headlines it couldn't ignore. Hidden abuse in a Michelin star empire. Audio files. Names. Faces. The teenager's recordings, combined with Victor's own footage and financial records, told a story that no PR team could bury. Victor, now very much visible, stood in front of cameras, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had failed, and now was ready to clean it up himself. The general manager. Fired on the spot. Investigations launched. Apologies made, real ones. But what shocked people most wasn't the corruption, it was the owner admitting it. Owning it. And walking back into the kitchen, apron on, side by side with the same staff who'd once ignored him. "You don't fix rot from the top," he said later. "You clean it from the ground." That day, people cheered not for money, but for a man who chose truth over comfort. And in that raw moment, redemption began. Months passed. The restaurant still served meals, but something fundamental had changed. Smiles were no longer forced. Voices no longer silenced. Victor, now walking slower but standing taller, made weekly rounds, not in suits, but in sleeves rolled high, asking questions, listening. Not every scar could be erased, but the culture was healing. And the teenager who'd once handed him that phone? She now led a training program for new hires, one built on dignity. The empire didn't fall, it evolved. But one truth haunted Victor still: how many others like him never see what's rotting beneath their success? So now, let me ask you, if someone like Victor could walk through his kingdom unseen, could you? Would your coworkers speak the same if they didn't know who you were? Or would their truth surprise you? Think about that. Hit like, share this story, and drop a comment. What would they say, if you weren't watching?